surge in the number of challenges to books, schools, bookstores, and libraries. It's usually the last weekend in September. Banned Book Weeks brings together the entire book community, librarians, booksellers, publishers, journalists, teachers, and readers, in shared support. And it highlights, the purpose of it is the value of free and open access to information, even those some may consider unorthodox or unpopular. So a few definitions to get started here. Intellectual freedom is the right of every individual to both seek and receive information.
Oops. I'm going to adjust this because we can't hear you. Here. There. And okay.
All right.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Okay.
That's good. Yeah.
So intellectual freedom is the right to both seek and receive information from all points of view without restriction. It provides free access to all expressions of ideas, which any and all sides of the question, cause, or movement may be explored. Censorship is the suppression of these ideas and information that certain persons, individuals, groups, or the government find objectionable or dangerous. Censors pressure public institutions like libraries to suppress and remove from public access. The censor wants to prejudge materials for everyone. So, a challenge or ban. A challenge is an attempt to remove or restrict materials based on the objections of a person or a group. A banning is the removal of those materials. So challenges do not simply involve a person expressing a point of view, rather it's an attempt to remove material from the curriculum of the library. So the statistics that you're going to see that I'm going to talk about include both challenged and banned books, but a challenged book week is not really the same look to it than banned book week is. So censorship is not new. 387 BC, Plato didn't like Homer. Learn on that. In 250 BC, China wanted to consolidate his power and wanted to burn all books relating to the teachings of Confucius. Caligula didn't like the Odyssey because, you don't want to give those Greeks ideas that they wanted to bring. In 1885, we saw the first challenges of many of Mark Twain. And of course, I'm sure we're all familiar with the 1933 Nazi Germany. But the challenges continue. So the freedom to read is based on the first Bill of Rights. Sorry. So Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion, prohibiting the free exercise, abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right to people to peaceably assemble. So the landmark case came in 1982 in the Island Tree School versus Pico. So the Island Tree School District in Long Island in 1975, the school board received a complaint from the community group, and they removed 9 to 10 books from the shelf. At first, they did it so that they said so school board members could read them. When this brought about press coverage, the school board called the books anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, and just plain filthy. Then senior of the school, Stephen Pico, joined with 4 other students to challenge the school board's decision to remove books. Pico claimed the books were removed because the passages in the books offended the group's social, political, and moral taste, and not because the books, taken as a whole, were lacking in educational value. A dozen library and free speech organizations filed briefs on the students' behalf, and the case went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 decision in favor of the students on the First Amendment ground, holding that the right to read is implied in the First Amendment. The government, in this case, a public school, cannot restrict speech because it does not agree with the content of that speech. This decision is called libraries places for voluntary inquiry and concluded that the school board's absolute discretion over the classroom did not extend to the library for that reason. All other cases since then have either referred back to or challenged that decision. So a little closer to home, books in Montana that have been challenged. Sherman Alexie's True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. It was published in 2007, and even today it's on the ALA's top 10 challenged books. In Helena, it was requested for reconsideration because it was obscene, vulgar, and pornographic. The book Horse was requested to be removed from an elementary library in Helena because the parent who objected to it believed that it promoted evolution.
Oh boy, wow.
The Big Sky by Guthrie was challenged in 1992 in Big Timber. It requested that it be pulled off a reading list because it was filled with explicit and vulgar language.
Oh.
For Those I Loved, this is a memoir of a Holocaust survivor. It was challenged in the Coors Library in Deer Lodge as the individual who claimed that the book was untrue because the Treblinka Holocaust didn't happen.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Down here, the Punkzilla was subject to a challenge in 2014 in Park County High School in Livingston, brought by 4 community members. They said the book was bashing schooling, the military, and religion, and that it advocated stealing, lying, and cheating. That sounds pretty good. In 1935, this Passion's Spin the Plot was actually banned by the Montana State School Board of Education, and it was removed by the head librarian from what was then the Montana State University Library, which is now Mansfield Library. Here in Butte, actually, the story of Mary McLean created quite a stir in 1902 when it was published. She described Butte in unflattering terms and called citizens dry and warped. The book was banned from the public library shelf. We do have multiple copies. What was most interesting to me is a number of books that were considered pro-German were banned in Montana-wide in 1918 under World War I. Wow. And other under the auspices of the Sedition Act. And during that same period, German books were burned in a bonfire on the main street of Lewistown.
Wow.
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 So, who challenges the books? 31% is patrons and 42% are parents,
Wow.
along with many others. And while libraries really have this attitude that don't tell us what tell us what you want to read, but don't tell us what you want other people not to read. So where they are, 49% of books are challenged in the public library, 30% of the school curriculum, and 20% of the school library. I don't see why academic libraries are left out, but
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
So the role of librarians, as part of the ALA Code of Ethics, we uphold the principles of the intellectual freedom and resist all efforts to censor the library. That's just as we see our role in the United States, where our democratic system is based on an informed citizenry. We find it to be our job in life to ensure that you have the right to come in and seek for any kind of information that you want. We'll even help you find it. So this brings up how libraries choose our collections. The importance of a collection's inclusivity is that, the library is the community's greatest equalizer. Anyone can come in and get what they have. Our one job is to provide the best resources to the community it serves, whether that's a book on a shelf, access to internet, technology help, our programming, our education. That's our job. So, stories that are represented in our collection are, humble, and they're humanized, and they educate, and they empower, and most importantly, they offer new perspectives or reinforce our understanding of the world. So through inclusivity and the celebration of diversity, and the belief that a library enriches and empowers the community, all who enter the library know that their voice is represented in our collection. So, we do have a policy at the library, public library, for anyone who'd like to challenge one of our materials. We have a collection development policy. This policy is written by librarians. We offer a chance for the public to weigh in. The board has final authority over it, and it kind of dictates what we buy. Of course, we focus mostly on Butte, so a Butte author or a book written by Butte. We then focus more on Montana. But we like to have a well and balanced collection. So while we may have 200 books on Butte, we try to have, worldwide views. We try to include books about Tibet or China, or just find something unexpected in the library, definitely. So if a patron wants to challenge materials in the collection, they're asked to fill out a form that you can get either in print or online, specifying exactly your objections to this material. The director of the library, Steph Johnson, will then take that form and the materials and review them herself and respond to the patron. If this is unsatisfactory, the library director then presents the challenge to the library board, which is made up of Butte citizens, and their response is final. They decide. So, that's it.
Thank you.
That's all.
Or challenge the list, yeah, for witchcraft. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Wait. It changed. Reasons for banning changed over the years.
Sorry, I've never used one of these before, so I'm just making sure. It's nice to see so many people here today interested in talking about this really important subject. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Christine Martin, and I was asked to come here to talk to you guys today. I'm the curator and building director of the Clark Chateau Museum, and then I'm also part of the Root and the Bloom Collective nonprofit. We're an arts and humanities nonprofit here in Butte, and we have a very special emphasis on working with youth here in town. So today I'm here to advocate for the power of literature and its ability to help us talk about things that we might not normally be able to. Literature is so powerful and so transportive as a medium, and through it we're able to experience new perspectives that are often far beyond what our everyday life might be. Many of the books on this list, there's a list compiled every year, many of the books that make this list of top contested and banned books do so because they deal with content that makes us uncomfortable. They deal with topics such as like sex and sexual orientation, identity. They deal with race, violence and violent language, and politics. And I would argue that part of why some of these books are so great at telling their stories is because they don't gloss over these very difficult topics. They force the reader to experience the world through their perspective, and even in some cases, especially with those dealing with race and sexual orientation, these books give the reader a relatable voice. A moment where they can say, this character is just like me. This person understands exactly what I'm going through. And I really can't argue how important that connection is for someone to be able to find a voice that they can connect to and through that voice not feel alone. And I'm going to give an example of 2 recent programs at the Chateau that use the power of storytelling to tackle 2 very difficult subjects. As some of you may know, we put on a series of stage play readings, and one of these back in the spring of this year that we produced was called 5 Kinds of Silence. This performance was a collaboration with Safe Space and was part of a larger conversation here in Butte, helping to raise awareness about domestic violence. And after every event, we always give the audience an opportunity to kind of, talk back and ask questions. And this particular panel of experts that we had invited for our talk back included members of the mental health professional community and law enforcement. And after the event, which for Safe Space was the first event of its kind that they had tried, I was told by Safe Space's director that it was by far the most audience participation that they had ever had at one of their events in 25 years. Wow. And in large part because the audience was given a safe way to talk about a really difficult subject. Instead of asking questions or maybe about themselves or people they know, they were able to ask questions about the characters in the play. We're able to use them as kind of a proxy. And we put a similar performance on earlier this month, actually, for Suicide Awareness Month. And this play was called Gruesome Playground Injuries. And again, we had really great audience participation, and it was because audience members were able to ask questions without the pressure of making it about themselves. And, the literature was so powerful that people were able to feel very comfortable talking about some really difficult subject matter. These plays dealt with, self-harm, and suicide, and eating disorders. The domestic violence play dealt with a very toxic family structure, even dealt with incest and rape. And people were able to safely ask questions that I would like to think maybe help someone get some information that maybe they really needed, and they were able to safely, through this play, ask these questions. And hopefully these, it helps somebody in that way. And I'm just gonna change tracks a little bit. So now a lot of books on this list that gets put together every year are for youth or young adults, overwhelmingly so. And I understand the desire that we have where we want to protect children from unpleasant subject matter, but I just have to say, after spending as much time as I do with young people here in Butte, you quickly realize that, the cat's out of the bag. I've read all of the top 10 books on this list, and I came across nothing that these kids haven't already been dealing with. Nothing's new. None of this information is new to them. These kids are dealing with topics of sex and sexual orientation and race and violence. And I think since they already know, I feel like by talking to them through literature, I'd rather talk to kids rather than, as one of my other friends in the community described it as, like, let's wrap them all up in cotton balls and keep them safe until they're 18, and then, they go out into the world and they're like, oh gosh, freak out, I read the top 10 list, and I really have to argue that it's so important not to censor these works. Through great literature that deals with this really heavy life stuff, these young adults are able to find voices that they can relate to. It can help them navigate their own, sometimes really messy lives. And it can really help them to not feel alone. There are people out there who might be going through exactly what these characters are going through. And it can be so helpful to read these stories and have someone to relate to, especially growing up in a small town where you may not encounter lots of different kinds of people. And ultimately, I think that literature really promotes, better mental health. So I feel like I've taken enough of your time talking a little bit about what we do. And today I brought two of my students with me from the Chateau. We have a high school internship program. It's free to all of Butte High students to participate in. They come and they collaborate with us all summer and a little bit throughout the school year as their time allows. Both of my students are great students here. This is Cassidy Duddy and Vivian Anderson, and I'm sure they're both seniors and they're going to do great things once they go off to college next year. And then both of the books that we've chosen for them to read are actually in the very top 10 list of what was the most contested and banned of last year. So my first student is Cassidy Duddy, and she'll be reading And Tango Makes Three. And all the events of this story are true in this book. Roy and Silo are two chin-strap penguins that live in the Central Park Zoo, and this is their story. It's adorable.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So this is And Tango Makes Three by Justin Richardson and Peter Parnell and illustrated by Henry Cole. In the middle of New York City, there is a great big park called Central Park. Children love to play there. It has a toy boat pond where they can sail their boats. It has a carousel to ride on in the summer and an ice rink to skate on in the winter. Best of all, it has its very own zoo. Everyday families of all kinds go to visit the animals there. But children and their parents aren't the only families at the zoo. The animals make families of their own. There are red panda bear families with mothers and fathers and furry red panda bear cubs. There are monkey dads and monkey moms raising noisy monkey babies. There are toad families and toucan families and cotton-top tamarin families too. And in the penguin house, there are penguin families. Every year at the very same time, the girl penguins start noticing the boy penguins, and the boy penguins start noticing the girls. When the right girl and the right boy find each other, they become a couple. Two penguins in the penguin house were a little different. One was named Roy and the other was named Silo. Roy and Silo were both boys, but they did everything together. They bowed to each other and walked together. They sang to each other and swam together. Wherever Roy went, Silo went too. They didn't spend much time with the girl penguins, and the girl penguins didn't spend much time with them. Instead, Roy and Silo wound their necks around each other. Their keeper, Mr. Gramsey, noticed the two penguins and thought to himself, they must be in love. Roy and Silo watched how the other penguins made a home. So they built a nest of stones for themselves. Every night, Roy and Silo slept there together, just like the other penguin couples. And every morning, Roy and Silo woke up together. But one day, Roy and Silo saw that the other couples could do something they could not. The mama penguin would lay an egg. She and the papa penguin would take turns keeping the egg warm until finally it would hatch. And then there would be a baby penguin. Roy and Silo had no egg to sit on and keep warm. They had no baby chick to feed and cuddle and love. Their nest was nice, but it was a little empty. One day, Roy found something that looked like what the other penguins were hatching, and he brought it to their nest. It was only a rock, but Silo carefully sat on it. And sat, and sat. When Silo got sleepy, he slept. And when Silo was done sleeping and sitting, he swam and Roy sat. Day after day, Silo and Roy sat on the rock. But nothing happened. Then Mr. Gramsci got an idea. He found an egg that needed to be cared for, and he brought it to Roy and Silo's nest. Roy and Silo knew just what to do. They moved the egg to the center of their nest. Every day, they turned it so each side stayed warm. Some days, Roy sat while Silo went for food. Other days, it was Silo's turn to take care of their egg. They sat in the morning and they sat at night. They sat through lunchtime and swim time and supper. They sat at the beginning of the month and they sat at the end of the month, and they sat all of the days in between. Until one day, they heard a sound coming from inside their egg. Peep, 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 it said. Roy and Silo called back, squawk, squawk. Peep, peep, answered the egg. Suddenly, a tiny hole appeared in the egg shell. And then, crack, out came their very own baby. She had fuzzy white feathers and a funny black beak. Now Roy and Silo were fathers. We'll call her Tango, Mr. Gramsci decided, because it takes two to make a tango. Roy and Silo taught Tango how to sing for them when she was hungry. They fed her food from their beaks. They snuggled her in their nest at night. Tango was the very first penguin in the zoo to have two daddies. Soon, Tango grew strong enough to leave the nest. Roy and Silo took her for a swim, just like all the other penguin families. And all the children who came to the zoo could see Tango and her two fathers playing in the penguin house with the other penguins. Hooray, Roy! Hooray, Silo! Welcome, Tango! They cheered. At night, the three penguins returned to their nest. There they snuggled together and, like all the other penguins in the penguin house, and all the other animals in the zoo, and all the families in the big city around them, they went to sleep. Author's note. All of the events in this story are true. Roy and Silo are called chin-strap penguins because of the delicate line of black feathers that loops under their beaks, as if to hold a hat in place. After years of living side by side in the Central Park Zoo, they discovered each other in 1998, and they have been a couple ever since. Tango, their only chick, was born from an egg laid by another penguin couple named Betty and Porky. That couple had often hatched their own eggs, but they had never been able to care for more than one at a time. In 2000, when Betty laid 2 fertile eggs, Rob Gramsci decided to give Roy, Silo, and one of those eggs a chance to become a family. If you go to the Central Park Zoo, you can see Tango and her parents splashing around in the penguin house, along with their friends, including Nipper, Squawk, Charlie, Wasabi, and Pee-wee. There are 42 chin-strap penguins in the Central Park Zoo and over 10 million chin-strap penguins in the world. Sorry. But there is only one Tango.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Cassidy. And so my next student I have to read to you today is Vivian Anderson, and she'll be reading a book called I Am Jazz, which is also a true story about a young girl named Jazz. Oh, you can put it on maybe the stand?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So hi, I'm Vivian Anderson, and I just wanted to say, first of all, sorry, I kind of have a slight cold going, so if I have to stop and cough, I very much apologize. But today I'm reading I Am Jazz by Jessica Herthel and Jazz Jennings, and pictures by Shalon McNicholas. Okay. I Am Jazz. For as long as I can remember, my favorite color has been pink. My second favorite color is silver, and my third favorite color is green. Here are some of my favorite other things: dancing, singing, backflips, drawing, soccer, swimming, makeup, and pretending I'm a pop star. Most of all, I love mermaids. Sometimes I even wear a mermaid tail in the pool. My best friends are Samantha and Casey. We always have fun together. We like high heels, princess gowns, or cartwheels and trampolines. But I'm not exactly like Samantha and Casey. I have a girl brain, but a boy body. This is called transgender. I was born this way. When I was very little, and my mom would say, "You're such a good boy," I would say, "No, Mama, good girl." At first, my family was confused. They'd always thought of me as a boy. As I got a little older, I hardly ever played with trucks, or tools, or superheroes, only princesses in mermaid costumes. My brothers told me this was girl stuff. I kept right on playing. My sister says I was always talking to her about my girl thoughts and my girl dreams, and how one day I'd be a beautiful lady. She would giggle and say, "You're a funny kid." Sometimes my parents let me wear my sister's dresses around the house, but whenever we went out, I had to put my boy clothes on again. This made me mad. Still, I never gave up trying to convince them. Pretending I was a boy felt like telling a lie. Then, one amazing day, everything changed. Mom and Dad took me to meet a new doctor who asked me lots and lots of questions. Afterward, the doctor spoke to my parents, and I heard the word transgender for the very first time. That night at bedtime, my parents both hugged me and said, "We understand now. Be who you are. We love you no matter what." This made me smile and smile and smile. Mom and Dad told me I could start wearing girl clothes to school and growing my hair long. They even let me change my name to Jazz. Being Jazz felt much more like being me. Mom said that being Jazz would make me different from the other kids at school, but that being different is okay. What's important, she said, is that I'm happy with who I am. Being Jazz caused some other people to be confused too, like the teachers at school. At the beginning of the year, they wanted me to use the boys' bathroom and play on the boys' team in gym class, but that didn't feel normal to me at all. I was so happy when the teachers changed their minds. I cannot imagine playing on the same team as Casey and Samantha. Even today, there are kids who tease me or call me by my boy name or ignore me altogether. This makes me feel crummy. Then, I remember that kids who get to know me usually want to be my friend. They say I'm one of the nicest girls at school. I don't mind being different. Different is special. I think what matters most is what a person is like inside. And inside, I am happy, I am having fun, and I am proud. I am Jazz.
Thank you, Vivian. And then I just wanted to say that this book was also on the top 10 list, and it was put out by a group called the Trans Kids Purple Rainbow Foundation, which was created in 2007, and their commitment is to help enhance the lives of kids with gender dysphoria, and they're dedicated to promoting awareness and acceptance of children with gender dysphoria. And they also work with trans youth by sponsoring gatherings, special programs. They provide scholarships, and they also work with a lot of homeless youth, which you may not know, but a lot of youth that end up becoming homeless, a very large percentage of those youth are members of the trans community. It's because they, face difficulty at home. So they do very important work, and part of that is through books like this. So I think that's all I had for my part of the presentation. Did you have any words to add? So at this time, we've got some time left. We've got about 20 minutes if anybody has any questions.
I think she has a show on TV.
She does.
Yeah, the real.